I've taken down cartel bosses, disarmed bombs with seconds to spare, and faced men armed to the teeth in the middle of nowhere. But none of that prepared me for the kind of rage that burned through me the day Evelyn Crawford, our HOA president, shoved my 12-year-old daughter's wheelchair toward a trash bin like she was yesterday's garbage. I've seen cruelty before, but what I witnessed that sunny Wednesday in what was supposed to be our peaceful neighborhood shattered every assumption I had about safety. That day didn't start any different. I'd wrapped up my briefings early at the field office. Being the special agent in charge of the regional FBI branch didn't leave much room for early afternoons off, but after my wife Lindsay was killed by a drunk driver bringing our daughter, Emily, home from school, I'd made it a rule to prioritize family whenever I could. Emily has cerebral palsy, but she's never let that define her. She's brilliant, passionate about science, and can make a hardened federal agent crack a smile with her goofy jokes. We'd moved to Brookstone Hills just 2 months prior when I accepted my promotion. The neighborhood seemed perfect in paper. Accessible homes, good schools, close to her doctors. The HOA even approved all our modifications without a hitch. That is, until Evelyn Crawford made her disapproval known. The ramp ruins the aesthetics of the block, she told me during our first meeting, referring to the gentle slope we added to our front entrance. She suggested using the back door like we were supposed to hide Emily away like a dirty secret. I stood my ground, reminding her of the ADA laws. She backed off publicly but doubled down on petty harassment. Notices about our mailbox height, the generator we installed for Emily's medical equipment. I handled it all calmly. My FBI training in conflict resolution proved surprisingly handy in suburban warfare. That Wednesday, Emily was chattering about her science project on water quality as we pulled into our accessible parking spot at the curb approved and marked because our steep driveway was dangerous for her wheelchair. I was strapping her in when Evelyn strutted up the street, her designer shades barely hiding the disdain oozing off her. "Mr. Carson," she snapped, "that's the 3rd time this week you've parked here instead of your garage. This isn't a public lot." I kept my face neutral. "Mrs. Crawford, you signed off on this spot yourself. It's for Emily's safety." Her lips tightened. "That was only for emergencies. It's an eyesore. The neighbors are complaining." I called her bluff. The Carters and the Rodriguezes, our immediate neighbors, had been nothing but kind. Evelyn ignored me, turned to Emily, and in that syrupy, condescending tone that made my skin crawl, asked, "Shouldn't you be using the back entrance?" We agreed medical equipment stays out of sight. Emily, wise beyond her years, held her head high. "My wheelchair isn't medical equipment. It's how I move, like your legs." Evelyn's face flushed. "Don't talk back, young lady. Your father's ruining our neighborhood's value with his modifications." I stepped between them. "My daughter's safety outweighs your aesthetics, Mrs. Crawford." I turned to guide Emily inside, but Evelyn wasn't done. She lunged, grabbed Emily's wheelchair handles, and shoved it straight toward the open garbage bin at the curb. The world slowed. Emily screamed as she toppled forward into the filthy container, her chair crashing on its side. I ripped her out, heart pounding, checking her trembling body. She was scraped, filthy, but the look in her eyes broke me more than any wound. Pure humiliation. "What is wrong with you?" I hissed, keeping my voice low but deadly. Evelyn backed up, playing innocent. She rolled into it herself. I barely touched it. Sarah Patel, our neighbor and civil rights attorney, was already at my side, phone in hand. "I recorded everything," she said. Evelyn paled. "You can't film me without permission." "Actually, I can. And what you did, that's assault." Evelyn scoffed. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Who are you going to call?" "My husband was police chief for 20 years. No one's taking your side." That smug entitlement I'd seen it from cartel bosses, but seeing it from a suburban HOA president was surreal. I pulled out my credentials. "I'm Special Agent Mark Carson, FBI. You just assaulted my daughter on camera. Choose your next words carefully." Evelyn's face crumbled. "You FBI? But you said you worked in security." "Federal security." Sarah was already on the phone with 911. Evelyn stammered about misunderstandings as the police arrived. Officer Mendoza took statements from everyone. Neighbors crowded in, some recording on their phones. Evelyn's story changed with every sentence, but Sarah's video was irrefutable. The officer cuffed her for assault and battery of a minor. She screamed about knowing people, but Mendoza stayed calm. Your husband's retired, ma'am. And he always told us no one's above the law. When Evelyn's husband, Robert Crawford, arrived, he wasn't furious at me. He looked embarrassed. Agent Carson, he said quietly, I am so sorry. Is your daughter okay? Physically? She'll heal. Emotionally? That's another story. He nodded grimly. This isn't the first time, is it? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He looked tired. I'm filing for separation. I've enabled this for too long. In the following days, the DA, armed with Sarah's footage, charged Evelyn. The HOA voted her out, replacing her with Thomas Green, who vowed to make Brookstone Hills a community of respect, not exclusion. I stayed out of the vote to avoid conflicts of interest, but Sarah represented us and brought back overwhelming community support. But inside our house, the aftermath was brutal. Emily refused to leave the house in her chair. She wouldn't even let me park in the accessible spot. She wouldn't sleep, wouldn't smile. Dr. Lee, her psychologist, told me to give her control. So I did. 10 days later, she surprised me by asking to speak at the next HOA meeting. They need to hear it from me, Dad. For other kids like me. That night, I watched my daughter who a week ago wouldn't leave the house roll into that meeting and give a speech that silenced the entire room. She talked about what inclusion really means, how a neighborhood is about people, not just houses. She ended with, my wheelchair isn't an eyesore. It's part of me, and no one should feel ashamed of who they are. The room erupted in applause. Thomas created an accessibility committee with Emily as honorary consultant. Families came out of the woodwork, finally feeling safe to speak up. Brookstone Hills transformed. New ramps, sensory areas in the park, clear guidelines for accessibility modifications. But more than that, the people changed. Evelyn pleaded guilty, sentenced to community service and therapy. Robert finalized their divorce, acknowledging his part in letting this fester. He started volunteering at Emily's Adaptive Sports League. Your daughter, he told me at her first basketball game, has made this place better than it's ever been. 6 months later, the neighborhood hosted an accessibility fair organized by Emily. She gave interviews, led panels, even got our field office to create a new disability liaison position. She won a Youth Leadership Award. When she accepted it, she said, one person can start a conversation, but it takes a community to make change real. A year later, Brookstone Hills received a state award for inclusivity. Emily stood tall, her voice clear as she told the crowd. Accessibility isn't just ramps and elevators. It's belonging. As we drove home, Emily looked at me and smiled. Dad, I'm glad we moved here. I looked at her, astonished. Even after what happened, she nodded. If we hadn't, would anyone have stood up to Mrs. Crawford? Would anything have changed? I squeezed her hand, speechless. She added with a grin. Plus, you have to admit, the look on her face when you showed your badge was priceless. We laughed. The incident would always be part of our story, but it wouldn't define us. What would define us was how we rebuilt after being knocked down. Evelyn Crawford wanted to erase us from her perfect picture. Instead, she sparked a revolution that made our community stronger, braver, and more beautiful than her narrow vision ever could. I've taken down cartel bosses, disarmed bombs with seconds to spare, and faced men armed to the teeth in the middle of nowhere. But none of that prepared me for the kind of rage that burned through me the day Evelyn Crawford, our HOA president, shoved my 12-year-old daughter's wheelchair toward a trash bin like she was yesterday's garbage. I've seen cruelty before, but what I witnessed that sunny Wednesday in what was supposed to be our peaceful neighborhood shattered every assumption I had about safety. That day didn't start any different. I'd wrapped up my briefings early at the field office. Being the special agent in charge of the regional FBI branch didn't leave much room for early afternoons off, but after my wife Lindsay was killed by a drunk driver bringing our daughter, Emily, home from school, I'd made it a rule to prioritize family whenever I could. Emily has cerebral palsy, but she's never let that define her. She's brilliant, passionate about science, and can make a hardened federal agent crack a smile with her goofy jokes. We'd moved to Brookstone Hills just 2 months prior when I accepted my promotion. The neighborhood seemed perfect in paper. Accessible homes, good schools, close to her doctors. The HOA even approved all our modifications without a hitch. That is, until Evelyn Crawford made her disapproval known.